it feels to me like what you're saying is, all right, so a bunch of people go into an art gallery not intending to buy anything. They observe and enjoy the paintings, and then they leave, and maybe they paint something inspired by what they saw. I don't think that like observing something and learning from that observation crosses the threshold unless someone is like posting
They
something
add
in a
it.
context in
They
which it's
add from their
protected.
human experiences. They add something new
Hmm.
because they add their own human creativity, their own humanity, their own emotions, their own human experiences. Like they grew up a certain way. They have experienced
Hmm.
certain things, and that then informs how they interpret the art they're seeing, and then how they replicate it or how they make their own art being inspired by that art. Let's make this a lot more simple because I think AI is obscured, like I've said multiple times, by the sheer amount of data.
Hmm.
Let's just say you have 10 oil paintings of flowers and vases.
Okay.
They're copyrighted, someone owns them, they've not given permission for anyone to use them. You have an art teacher using these 10 paintings to teach her art class.
Hmm.
When she uses these 10 paintings, she's not just feeding these 10 paintings into the brains of her students, she is teaching off them. She might look at them and look at the technique of the application of the oil paint. She might look at composition, how light interacts, color theory, all those different aspects of the art, and is then going to use those aspects to teach their students how to make better art. She is adding her own creative expression already at layer one. Then these students who have learned off of the teacher teaching will be able to use those lessons to make art. They can make art which isn't a vase and flowers, and they could even use those lessons for like non-oil paint. They can then use everything they learned to apply it and use their own emotions and self-expressions to make their own art inspired by those 10 copyrighted works. But
Hmm.
let's pretend these AIs don't need massive amounts of data, which they do. But let's pretend that you can make an AI with just these 10 oil paintings of flowers and vases. That AI would take those 10 images and then only use the data from those 10 images to make probably just different oil paintings with flowers in vases. It wouldn't add anything new. The teacher added her own experience to make a lesson plan. Then the students add their own experience to use those lessons to make something new. The AI is just combining the data and then making something based on that data. Do you understand how, like, the same thing? If we don't obscure it by there being millions of paintings that it's referencing from, it's not adding anything. Hello, peoples of the internet. It is Sharkyevno here. The video that you are watching right now is a debate I had, and the topic of the debate is AI art theft? Before I get into it, I do want to make sure everyone is aware of the fact that I am not anti-AI. My criticisms are of generative AI art. I think AI in general can be positive for society and can have a lot of benefits. So that is why I don't criticize AI as a whole in this debate at all. And also, my audio is peaking for the first 1 minute and 30 seconds. I do fix that 1 minute and 30 seconds in, so it's not like that for the whole debate, so don't worry. Enough intro, let's get into the debate right now. Make sure to like the video and comment any thoughts you had on the video and subscribe if you're not subscribed.
Right.
So what I want to start is, so we don't argue stuff we do agree on, I'll start like at the ground floor and then work on until we do reach a disagreement. Does it sound like a plan? And then we can like debate that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we already talked about this, and I know you agree with this. But I just want for the audience,
Hmm.
do you agree we should have copyright? Like if someone like not our current copyright system is perfect, but like if let's just say someone makes a digital art piece on like a digital software and they upload it to Instagram, they should then have the protection that some random person shouldn't just be able to take their art and then sell it to for profit.
Yeah, I mean, I think like what I want to say the original limits on copyright were like 7 years with an option to renew it for another 7 years if you met certain criteria. And obviously, like Disney and a number of other corporations have kind of pushed that to extend the amount of time to something that's unreasonable. But I think, with a reasonable time, the original intentions were certainly good.
I 100% agree. I think the Disney extending copyright every single time Mickey Mouse would expire was awful, and that copyright shouldn't go for infinity. I think we can all agree on that. I'm just making sure. Again, I'm not overpowering you. Um, so we can agree on
I
that.
have I have a bit of a question about why though, because there's a couple of possible things that can go into that.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the reasons that I think that's a good thing is that I believe that all art is derivative to some extent or another. Like I don't think it's possible to have anything completely original because, everyone who makes any kind of art was influenced
Mhm.
by earlier artists. You're kind of standing on the shoulder of giants, right? And it's kind of like the larger the pool of accessible art resources people have access to for learning, for practice, for fan art, parody, imitation, etc. The larger that pool of existing art resources is, I think it allows for artists to more effectively, express
Express
themselves.
themselves. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree with that. I'm totally in favor of fair use. I think that especially in the United States, they're way too litigious with copyright, and I think that there should be a lot of leeway to using other works like in your own work for creativity. I don't think practicing on replicating artwork should somehow be like against the law. I 100% agree, and I think that we should limit how long copyright lasts. So I can agree on all
Mhm.
those things, and I think that basically we live in a society. Why I think copyright needs to exist, and I think you can probably agree with this, is we live in a society which markets exist, money
Mhm.
exists, and people will use art to make a profit, and it protects people from basically just the larger corporation being able to outproduce whatever you do with an economy of scale, and it protects that. That's why I think copyright is necessary in our society, at least.
Yeah. Well, there have even been a few cases where corporations will do this. Like there was a minor controversy. I can't remember if it was EA or Activision or I don't know, one of the big companies. Basically, they one of their artists stole a piece of concept art, or I mean, not stole exactly, but they basically, like ripped it off and made a near identical copy. They took someone's 2D artwork of a character, remade it in 3D, and then sold it as a skin in a game online. And like it was so similar that it was clearly derivative and directly traced, from 2D to 3D. And like that right
Yeah.
there, because they were a big corporation, they basically just said, "Yeah, we're not going to do anything about it. You can't afford to sue us." And like there was a bit of a public outcry over it, but they never actually faced any consequences, as far as I remember. I wish I could remember the specific game. That might be able to, see if anything changed since I heard
And
about it. But
I've heard that story, and we agree on the copyright. I would say to a more extent than most people agree on copyright. And because this is a debate, I think we should at least start getting to the eventually to the point where we disagree. So we
mhm.
agree on copyright, mostly. Um, let's talk about legislation. So the first thing I'll go through some things that I think should happen, from the most milk toast to the more extreme. So I'll start with the most milk
Mhm.
toast, and if you disagree with it, we can debate it. If you agree with it, we can just go to the next thing because I know we will eventually disagree. Um, so I think that AI companies, I believe in transparency. I think that AI companies should have to show where their data is coming from and what it is. Right now, they kind of just scrape whatever they want, and no one knows what they're scraping, and they can say, "Oh, we're doing it ethically. We're not taking this," but they actually are. And I think it's important that one people know when their data is being used for AI, and I think that can be shown if the companies that are using it have to show where they source their data. Do you
Mhm.
agree with that? That they should have to show where they source their data?
Not necessarily. Like I kind of see that as being similar to if an artist practiced an art style, if someone were to say, all right, now show us every art piece you used as a reference while practicing that style, and it's like that'd be kind of an unreasonable burden to put on an artist because a lot of artists draw from a lot of sources, and like you may have like one or two specific reference pieces you were using for like a pose or something, but like to show all the reference pieces that went into learning that skill, or even if you're drawing without a reference because you kind of internalized it through practice, then that would be kind of an unreasonable burden. And I see that as similar with AI art in that um, having a really wide source of things to draw from. I don't know. It seems like that's the kind of thing where like if they more openness and transparency would be good, but I don't think it's necessarily bad to have none.
So that's where I would argue why an artist using a reference, an
Mhm.
artist having previous art that they've experienced to draw from and stuff like that, or even someone taking uh making a collage of only images they don't own, why that's different from AI. And the difference is that they are adding their own personhood to that. And AI art, it can only pull from its data set. Do you at least agree from that an AI art can only pull from its data set? For example, if you were to make an AI art model and not give it any watercolor works, like zero,
Mhm.
never show it watercolor, it would not be able to make a watercolor painting. Like, do you agree with the statement that AI can only pull from its data set?
I think it's generally true, but there are some exceptions there. AI can kind of make connections between different things in order to get to things that aren't in the data set. Um,
Sure, sure. If you have, if you only give it two-legged things and say make a four-legged thing, it can be like, oh, based on this information we have, we make a four-legged thing, but that's still only working within its data set. And then there's
mhm.
also the distinction that so there's not no human. If you just run an AI, a human isn't adding anything to that. Do you at least agree with that statement?
um,
Just running AI.
I mean, like, I can think of cases where that would be true, but I don't think that's the default. Like, if someone was to just scrape images at random to put together a data set, and then put together an AI image generator, and then just ask it to generate something without pointing it in a
Yeah,
direction,
that's what
just
I mean. That's what I mean. Like,
completely
I'm talking about
randomly.
the internal workings of it.
Mhm. Um, See, I think that like a prompt is a way of taking a large but not infinite number of options and then condensing it into something useful. Um, and I think that that process can have kind of an artistic influence
Yeah, I'm not.
involved.
I'm not even talking about the prompt yet. I'm just talking about the internal workings. Like the just not the prompt, just the AI itself isn't adding any new creation. It's not adding new human work to it. There's no new human. There's no new human creativity being added within the AI itself. We can argue like the prompt and
Hmm.
that afterwards.
Yeah, let me think on that for a moment because I'll just think out loud while I'm trying to process this. So I guess if you have like I don't know two images, you have like a landscape painting and you have a painting of a person, and then you have those as your training data, and then the output is a landscape picture with a person in it because it drew those elements from those two different sources.
Mhm.
Um, then the output is something that is a unique result that drew from
Yes,
two previous human results, and I don't know. I mean, like
it's a
if a
unique
person were to
result.
do the same thing, um, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really. Maybe I'm like
What
overly focused on the results here rather than the process, but I'm not really sure I see why
So
the
I'll explain.
distinction is important.
The distinction is that if a human, let's just say a human is making a collage with only images they don't own, copyrighted
Uh-huh.
images they don't own, when they make that collage, they are being informed by their own human experiences, emotions, motivations, goals, all that stuff. They're being informed by it to create something new. They're adding it. They're objectively adding to it by adding that experience. And with that experience, they are using these previously made images to create a new composition. They decide how to cut the images out. They decide how to place on the paper. And that's all informed by its experience. But an AI is only informed by its data set. It's not
Hmm.
informed by some external experiences that
Well,
that
isn't
basically
the data
inform the
set like
creativity of human.
isn't the data set kind of a representation of those experiences?
Yes, they're the humans' experiences. That's what I'm saying. The AI isn't adding to it. It's only using the creations that humans have made, informed by previous creations and their own experience. The AI isn't then adding anything. It's only using those creations to make something.
Hmm. I mean, so this is like saying like if you were to, I don't know, like squeeze an orange to get or to get the juice out of it, or if you were to like, throw the orange slices into a blender to get the juice out of it, like one of them is using human hands to process and get a result, the collage in that case, and then the AI art would be using a machine to accomplish the same result, but it still has an
Well,
input that's under the control of the person.
that's the thing about art, though, is it's the value of art is the human expression.
Hmm.
So if the value of art is the human expression and something being made fair use is by them, I mean, I can't think of the exact definition of fair use, but it includes being transformative by adding your own twist on it. You're basically adding your own twist of it and being transformative, and
Hmm.
that is informed by your experience. Every person would make a if you give 100 people if you give 100 people 5 images and say make a collage out of this, they would all be different. And they would all be different because the person is interacting with those images differently, being informed by their experience. While an AI doesn't have that extra part.
Hmm.
So it's only the images. Even though it's technically making something new, it's only the images that it already has.
Yeah. I mean, even all right. So if I go with what you're saying there, I'm not sure how that really has an impact on the morality or the ethics of it. I mean, all right. So to
Because
use your collage example, this might be going a little bit outside of the original analogy, but if those same 5 people who made a collage with previously selected art were to make collages using AI art, could their process of turning AI art into a collage make it art?
if you were, I think it would work the same way. I mean, if you just let's just say you just cut out the images, okay, and you
Mhm.
just randomly place them on a page, you're not really adding anything. But if you're taking these images to tell a new story with it, then
Mhm.
that would be under fair use. But I think if you were to, it would be the same thing. If I were to consider AI to AI to be like not unique work, I would it would go under those same rules. I mean, for example, recently I made a piece that was almost to show this, where I took ChatGPT, made ChatGPT write a poem, basically an anti-AI poem, and then
Mhm.
used an image generator to make an image that was a Grim Reaper, and then photoshopped a really messed up hand onto it because of the AI making messed up hands joke. And then I
I
put
like
those
the
together.
messed up hands. There's something charming about it. It's like it's
Yeah,
trying its
so
best to anthropomorphize us a
and
little
I
bit,
and
but
I took all those works. I took all
yeah,
those
yeah.
works only made by AI. I added nothing other than choosing the typeface, and I put them on a
Hmm.
page to tell a story. I'm then being basically using fair use. So I would say if you're making a collage of only AI images, you're still adding that humanity.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm not entirely sure if there is humanity added during the process of so the AI has images in its data set, and then that creates like the latent space of like all the possible interconnections between those
Mhm.
images. and as you explore that, you get an output there. I think that like the existence of that latent space that's created isn't necessarily art, but I think that exploring that using prompts as one way to explore that latent space, and then the selective process of pairing out the unuseful outputs. So like when I use Midjourney, that's the one I use. It's not as technical
Hmm.
as some of the others, but it's pretty easy to use. So um, if I have a particular idea for a prompt, then I'll enter that in, and that's almost like taking a camera and pointing it in the direction of this multi-dimensional space of all the interconnections between the images in the data set. So like there's an element of like exploration in pointing this camera in that direction, and then it takes like 4 pictures at a time with each prompt. Um, and I can say, okay, this top one, I'm going to upscale that because it fits what I had in my mind, or it's closer to what I was envisioning when I started this process. And I can do that, however many times. And like the better I am at prompting, the fewer attempts it takes to get something close enough to what I wanted. Um, and then also like the more variations I make, I can sometimes just stumble upon something that's close to what I wanted almost by accident or just through brute force by, just using random chance. And then I can also influence that more by like increasing like the randomness of the variations. So like the existence of that latent space may not be art, but I think that the process of selecting from that space something specific has a certain amount of artistic input.
So I am right after you. So at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, or like 6 p.m. Pacific Time, I am debating whether AI art is art. So we can get into that a little bit, but I don't want that to be the only thing, because I'm gonna be discussing that
Yeah.
with someone later too. Um, but I will say that if you are the more you do yourself, the more decisions you make, intentional decisions you make, to creatively express yourself, I would say you become more of an artist.
Okay. And I
But
agree with you
then
on that.
but
But
then
I
you
guess
then the AI is still doing the rest for you. So that's my brief
mhm,
argument. But for in the sense of whether it's theft, it's the idea that you are taking that maybe the person stealing from the artist, I wouldn't say is the person using the AI art necessarily, but
mhm,
it's rather the AI companies, because they're taking this art, they're training off this art without adding any new creativity or storytelling, and then running it through their AI, which it's a little bit disconnected because of the sheer scale of it. So it's obscured by the sheer scale of their data, but they
mhm.
are essentially running it through their AI, and someone can use their AI to basically do copyright infringement that is
Yeah.
obscured by the scale of the data. So if someone were to just say create an apple, they are not themselves adding enough new thing to the art. They're not adding enough new thing to consider it theirs. But then they can then take that apple and then sell prints of it. But if I were to
Mhm.
then find an apple that's an art, like just find an artist, find an apple they made, and then sell it, that would be copyright infringement. But because the apple is instead made by millions of different artists, with the AI itself not adding something new to it, I can then sell that print of that apple without any issues. So people can use this AI for art, but they also let people use it for not art, not adding new things.
Mm. Well, I guess I think that someone would kind of have to go out of their way to create not art using AI. But I think I kind of I place the bar really low for what counts as art. I guess like for me, it's like anything that has like any amount of creative expression and that someone thinks is art is probably art. Like that's kind of a rule of thumb that I use. And so most AI, most AI images fit my definition of art. Whether or not it's good art is like another barrier it has to cross, and a lot
For
of it's slop. I'm not denying that, but like I don't know. I
for
mean,
copyright though,
it seems.
do you think someone can take a picture of do you think someone can take a picture someone made of an apple, like say I want an apple, and then take someone
Mhm.
else's picture they made of an apple and then sell it, like painted of an apple?
I would say no, but if someone were to take a picture of 1 million apples and then superimpose them over each other with like transparency so that each version of this app of like apples from a bunch of different people is equally layered over it, like it would probably just come up like a mushy blur rather than an identifiable object, but like it wouldn't. I don't think that would fit um
Then they
the
added their
definition of.
own human expression. They made the intentional decisions to
Mhm,
overlay those apples over each other. The human made the intentional decisions to do that. Even if a human's like I want to take a million apples and overlay them over each other, a million different pictures, and they make a math algorithm that overlays all those images,
mhm.
they are making that decision to overlay those images. It wouldn't necessarily look like an apple, but it would be creating something, and they're trying to say something with that creation. But if someone uses an AI to make an apple, they're not like people use AI art like this all the time. They're like, I want a wizard riding a hot dog.
Mhm.
That's a little bit more complex than an apple, but I still don't think at the bar of human addition of expression to be fair use. They say
Yeah.
that, but they aren't making the decision being like I want to make a million overlaid apples. Do you understand how that's different?
Mhm. Um, Not entirely, because like I don't know. I mean, I guess there's some intentionality there, and there's a message being conveyed in the example with the apple, whereas
Mm-hmm.
the creation of a data set is done for purely practical purposes without an artistic vision necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, but that's I don't know. I mean, so would that make like an AI art program more like a paintbrush than like I don't know. Um, or because I mean I still think it's valid as an artistic tool, even if it doesn't itself have artistic merit, because like I think that the use of it can add artistic merit even if it doesn't have it in a neutral state.
I agree that you can add artistic merit to it. I think it is a little bit different than a tool because when
Hmm.
you use a paintbrush, you're making more like a digital paintbrush, for example. You're
Hmm.
making more. No decisions are being made for you, because you decide how to use that paintbrush. But there's a lot of decisions being made for you in AI art based off of other people's works, which aren't done by a paintbrush. Um, but
Hmm.
what I would argue is so while you can do art with AI, I think you can use AI to do art. These AI companies are making a tool that basically lets people get away with copyright infringement by, if I were to just say, make an apple in this style. Like I want an oil painted apple.
Hmm.
they I'm not I'm not adding anything to it. And if the AI also isn't adding anything to it, nothing is being added. And because nothing is being added, nothing is being transformed, and that's copyright infringement. But it's being
So
obscured by the fact it's a million different art pieces.
so if an AI was trained on a data set of public domain art, um,
Hmm.
and art that people willingly volunteered. Like if they said, "Hey, we're asking for people to donate art for our data set. It's opt in, um, and we'd like to have that option if you're cool with it, but weren't didn't like scrape any data other than public domain data."
Hmm.
Would that not be copyright infringement, or would that bypass the ethical issues you're identifying?
It would bypass my stealing ethical issue of AI art. No, I don't think that would be stealing anymore because um they're willingly giving their art to be trained. It's like if I were to say you can use my painting of an apple to reproduce it. Uh, okay, now I'm not stealing your apple. It was given to me. So no, and my ethical quandaries of stealing would be put aside, you do have the issue that these companies require such massive amounts of data that OpenAI, for example, has itself admitted that if it could only work off of non-copyrighted works or not or work off of copyrighted works without paying for it, it couldn't exist.
Mhm.
They admit that. They admit that they have to use copyrighted works to exist in the form that they do. But if they didn't, then I wouldn't have no ethical qualms in the sense of stealing with it. I wouldn't say that's like stealing. I wouldn't have that issue.
So I think one of my concerns, from a purely practical perspective, is that um, if AI is required to only be made using public domain stuff or stuff that you own the IP rights to, then that would kind of mean that only large copyright holders or large IP holders or IP trolls would be able to make their own data sets. So in a way, it would almost be like, the opposite of open source. It would kind of kill the idea of an open source AI art movement, and it would kind of mean that Disney would be able to train their AI because they have kind of a critical mass of potential training data they own the rights to. Um, Whereas anyone else would only be able to make stuff that used the public domain. And like, okay, you might be able to use, you might be able to make a purely public domain generator, but like it wouldn't be able to make anything that isn't 100 years out of date in, either technologically or artistically. It's like, all right, draw me a car, and it goes usually like a Model T instead of something new. It's like, so I mean, I feel like the effect of limiting AI in that way would mean that only kind of large corporate actors would have access to that technology.
Who is making AI models right now?
All right, so Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, there's a few others, and I think Midjourney even just uses something based on Stable Diffusion. So, um,
They're a lot of them are pretty big companies.
yeah, yeah,
A small independent creator cannot make a AI model that can compete with the biggest AI models. Like
sure.
you can't do that right now. Um,
Hmm.
and the thing is too, if Disney was like, we're gonna make we're gonna make our movies with AI. Right now, I think they would be shit. Um,
Uh-huh.
but let's just say AI advances enough for it to becomes like actually like feasible for a Disney with just its own catalog to make decent AI movies. That turns into more of a discussion of, is AI good, like AI art, not AI in general. I think AI in general
Hmm.
is good for society. There's a lot of things we can do with AI. But is generative AI art good for society? Does it enhance the human experience, or does it water down human expression? That would turn more into one of those debates, because yeah, the thing is, you can't really function as an AI model without scraping people's data without consent.
Yeah.
This is a thing that even the
Well,
AI model, like biggest ones like OpenAI, admit.
within the current legal framework, most of these AI companies have sort of been scraping with consent just because um, I don't know, like the way that the legal system is right now basically means that like you have to sign away your rights to practically everything the moment you step online. So it's like once you've created a
That's
Google account and you've used and you've used a web browser, then like all right, anything beyond like I unless you're
if
exclusively
we
hosting your own
consider
website and uploading images there, any other way to put an image online pretty much waives those rights.
if you
Okay, so
upload
if
an
AI
image,
if
no, let me explain that. If you
yeah, yeah.
upload an image to Instagram,
Mhm.
and people can't then just go and take your image off Instagram and print it and sell it, you would still be able to sue them.
Right.
So there are still those protections. People act like if you upload something online, it's free game. That's not true. Or else no company would be able to be online, because then people would just take their logo.
Hmm.
Maybe it's harder to find online people taking your work, But if you do find them, you can sue them.
Right.
So, I mean, your point was like, well, basically that if you have your online work, that you're basically signing over your rights anyways. But I don't think that's true.
Well, I kind of get the impression that the main point we disagree on is whether AI, whether training a data set is analogous to piracy, or whether it's analogous to learning or practice when done by a human. Um, and it kind of makes intuitive sense to me. So I don't know if I can
Do you
exactly
agree for
explain.
something to be fair use that you have to add something to it?
Um, I would say yes.
That you have to not just physically like put a sticker on it, like not just like physically add something, but add something to the narrative that transforms it, or add some sort of expression to it.
Yeah, and I think that um, I don't think that like an AI data set or the AI software itself counts as art, but I think that through the use of it, it does add those qualities.
Apple example. I mean, how does me like I know I keep using this example, but how does me going to Stable Diffusion and saying make me an apple add enough narrative or transformation to be considered fair use?
Well, I would say that I don't know. This might be a weak argument or a weird argument, but I would say that it kind of removes a lot of the narrative, but that the absence of narrative is a different narrative if someone's just asking for a really generic art style. And then also, I would say that it is transformative in that the output um, is almost always indistinguishable as any specific apple that's in the training set.
But
And the cases where something, oh, sorry, what?
that goes back to my point that the fact that the art isn't the AI isn't adding anything to it. It's just using its data set, which is other people's works. And just because you can't see it anymore doesn't mean it's not stolen. I know this isn't digital. This isn't digital artwork, but if I were to if I were to go around town and steal fruit from 10 different people and
Mhm.
put it in a blender and make a smoothie, and they then come to me and say, you stole my fruit, and I say, well, actually, where's your fruit? Can you tell me, distinguish your fruit from the smoothie in this blender? The AI is obscured by
Well,
its sheer mass and of copyrighted works that you can't find the individual, but it still didn't add anything new.
I think part of the flaw in that analogy there is that people still have the apple. Like if I go out and steal someone's bike, um, then I have possession of the bike, and my possession of the bike prevents their access to it, right? Um,
That's not an argument against AI um being copyright infringement. That's an argument against intellectual property or digital art being protected at all. If you're going to say, the difference is that you still have your physical object. Well, if I upload a piece of art I made online and someone prints it out and sells it, I still have my file of the digital artwork, but they're still stealing from me. Because
sure.
you already agree
I,
that you think that those needs to be protected. That's an argument against protection of that's an argument against like digital copyright rather than an argument against AI infringing the digital copyright.
well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it seems to me like saying like AI is theft is kind of skipping a couple of steps. It's like
What
AI art. It would be more accurate for someone with your position to say AI art is piracy by default rather than AI art is theft by default. Because, you know,
Okay, theft is a simple term. Yeah, theft. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the legal
mhm.
definition of theft, but we'll use stealing then. I don't think that's a legal definition. Stealing, piracy is stealing, theft is stealing. I think that the generative AI models are stealing copyrighted works then. And also my Blender analogy wasn't was an analogy only to disprove one thing, to disprove that just because you can't see the original thing doesn't mean it's not stolen. That it was only to show that the you can't see it argument isn't great. It wasn't to prove anything else.
So I think part of why I'm trying to think of an analogy here that would explain my perspective, and it feels to me like what you're saying is, all right, so a bunch of people go into an art gallery not intending to buy anything. They observe and enjoy the paintings, and then they leave, and maybe they paint something inspired by what they saw. They're committing theft because they hook without paying, in that context. But it's like I don't think that like observing something and learning from that observation crosses the threshold unless someone is like posting something in a context in
They
which is
add from their
protected.
human experiences. They add something new
Mhm.
because they add their own human creativity, their own humanity, their own emotions, their own human experiences. Like they grew up a certain way. They have experienced
Mhm.
certain things, and that then informs how they interpret the art they're seeing, and then how they replicate it or how they make their own art being inspired by that art. They're not only using that art to make art. They're adding their own human experience. Again, it's they're adding something. I'm gonna take a sip of water.
Mhm.
You can talk while I'm taking a sip of water. It's all good.
Oh, I should probably drink some water myself.
Yeah.
Um,
And like you
mhm.
agreed that you need to add something for it to be fair use. And they add and it's fair use because they add something and you agree with that. And my argument is that the AI doesn't add anything.
Yeah. All right. Well, to go back to the analogy about like a paintbrush, if I have like a like one of those sponge brushes, and then I have like one of the horsehair brush or whatever, and if like those are the two tools that I'm using, each of those was created with limitations and with an intention on how it's supposed to be used.
Mm.
Um, and so, um, or even just saying like oil versus watercolor, it's like those are tools that someone would have access to, and it'll impact the output. Like you can't make a watercolor painting using oil paint. So like the tools do have some impact on what a person is limited, what limitations someone has, and there is a certain amount of intentionality that goes into the production of the tools that the artist then has to work with as a limitation. And I
But you own
see
the
AI
paintbrush.
as what's that?
You own the paint. You bought the paintbrush. You paid to own the watercolors. So now you get to use them how you want. The AI companies never asked for permission to use the art. It's like if I know we're comparing
Okay.
physical stuff, but I'm only making an analogy
Well, we're
for the
comparing
amount of
physical
a
stuff,
tool.
and then we're also comparing non-art objects that are tools to art objects or art, digital objects.
Again, I'm criticizing the maker of the tool, not the user of the tool. Like I said, I think
Hmm.
you can use AI art in a way that's fair use, but
Hmm.
I'm saying that the maker of the tool is the one who stole. If
Yeah.
you can use a paintbrush that had where the maker of the paintbrush s- did wage theft against his employees and
Hmm.
not be a theft, not be a thief. Um, I'm again talking about the creator of that tool. I mean, I've already explained why it's a
Well,
little bit different than most tools, but like that again, my criticism not at people who use AI, it's at the makers of AI.
yeah.
AI
Well,
arts,
I think
a
that
generative AI art. I want to again be very specific. I'm not against
yeah.
AI as a concept. I'm talking
Hmm.
about generative AI art.
So it's possible to use or to train or customize um, AI, generative art tools or whatever in a way that mimics the exact style of an existing artist. Um, and I think that like there have been cases where people have used AI to mimic a particular artist, and they did it with the intention of trying to imitate or pretend to be them, which is plagiarism.
Mhm.
Um, and so in that case, I would say that's a misuse of AI as a tool, and that it would meet the definition of of plagiarism, or it would meet the definition of plagiarism, which is sort of which is a type of theft if we extend that out a bit. Um,
Under your logic, I don't think it would, because if you see someone's art style
mhm.
and you mimic their art style to create something new, I don't think that's theft. Like if someone were to see the Disney art style and then make a character in the Disney art style, I don't think that's theft. I don't think
Yeah,
under what you're saying that would be theft.
that's right. But it becomes theft when there's like the identity theft part enters into the equation. Like so Disney, like
Mhm.
if I tell Midjourney to generate a bunch of Disney characters and then I post them online and say, "Hey, check this out. I found some Disney sketch art from an upcoming project." It's like me portraying them as having been made by the original artist is where that would be a problem. Um,
I think that
but
would
I think that would be
more
a
be just
problem if someone did the same thing, but they just learned the skills and did it by hand, you know?
so. Yeah, that the issue wouldn't be theft there. The issue would be probably like libel. It would be
Yeah.
defamation. So they would it wouldn't be an issue because it's theft. It would be an issue because it's defamation. But if you agree that using someone's art to train a model to make art like them would be stealing,
If it's done for the purpose of deception like that.
okay, then the issue's the deception, not the stealing.
Uh-huh. Yes. Um,
Okay.
and I
But
suppose
like,
you could
what does that
also,
have to do with whether AI is art? How does that show that AI art isn't theft? That the training
well,
on copyrighted
hmm,
work isn't theft or stealing?
yeah, that maybe that was a bit of a non sequitur. Sorry about that.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
um,
I was wondering, the connection.
yep.
So, do you agree? So, I still think you agree that you need to add something to that. You need to add to it, rather than just you can't just take copyrighted works. You need to add something transformative to it. But then you also kind of agree that the AI itself doesn't add anything new past what it's trained on.
Hmm.
So if it doesn't add anything new and you need to add something new for it to be fair use, and someone can use it to say, I want an oil painted vase of flowers, which isn't enough narrative or transformation to be fair use, where is the addition of expression, narrative, or emotion that makes it? Where is the addition? Where is something added?
Um, well, I mean, I don't know. It's transformative in that the result is different from anything specific in the training data. Like that, or like that seems to me like evidence that it's transformative. Um, is that except in cases with overfitting, which is kind of a an
But I already made
unintentional.
the argument that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it wasn't taken. Like, okay, let's simplify it. Let's make this a lot more simple, because I think AI is obscured, like I've said multiple times, by the sheer amount of data.
Mhm.
Let's just say um you have 10 oil paintings of flowers and vases.
Okay.
They're copyrighted. Someone owns them. They have not given permission for anyone to use them.
Okay.
Sorry. Had a bit of a cough before I started it. So yeah, they've not given permission for anyone to use them. You have an art teacher using these 10 paintings to teach her art class.
Hmm.
When she uses these 10 paintings, she's not just feeding these 10 paintings into the brains of her students. She is teaching off them. She might look at them and look at the technique of the application of the oil paint. She might look at composition, how light interacts, color theory, all those different aspects of the art, and is then going to use those aspects to teach their students how to make better art. She is adding her own creative expression already at layer 1. Then these students who have learned off of the teacher teaching will be able to use those lessons to make art. They can make art which isn't a vase and flowers, and they could even use those lessons for like non-oil paint. They can then use everything they learned to apply it and use their own emotions and self-expressions to make their own art inspired by those 10 copyrighted works. But
Hmm.
let's pretend these AIs don't need massive amounts of data, which they do. But let's pretend that you can make an AI with just these 10 oil paintings of flowers and vases. That AI would take those 10 images and then only use the data from those 10 images to make probably just different oil paintings with flowers in vases. It wouldn't add anything new. The teacher added her own experience to make a lesson plan. Then the students add their own experience to use those lessons to make something new. The AI is just combining the data and then making something based on that data. Do you understand how, like, the same thing? If we don't obscure it by there being millions of paintings that it's referencing from, it's not adding anything.
Well, okay, so in the teacher being able to explain and teach using or using their drawings as examples would be kind of giving the students data that the AI wouldn't have access to, because like you can infer some of the technique from what goes into a painting, but there's other parts of it that are outside of the scope of what you can know or learn from one image.
I
Um,
agree, but she got that data from her experiences, not from copyrighted works. I
okay.
agree there's more data. That's the point. If you boil humans down to data, there is more data. That's the point I'm making. And that data is being gathered from their human experience rather than works that someone else made.
I'm not sure I see the distinction between works that someone else made and human experience. Like they're all types of experience.
Because your human experience is your own and not a copyrighted work that someone else created that you're stealing. You don't steal your own human experience. Yeah, I agree. They're all data sets. They're all
Mhm.
data sets, but one of them is a painting someone worked hard to make and owns, and the other one is your human experience that you just get by living. No one owns that but you. And by adding that, you're making it no longer stealing. It's fair use.
So I'm going to expand on your analogy a little bit. All right, so we have this teacher. They make 10 paintings of vases. They use them as an instructional aid. Now, let's say that they call out sick. They're sick unexpectedly, and and so they're not able to teach their class. They made these paintings for their own personal use. Didn't offer permission for anyone to use them, um, or reproduce them or whatever. The school, not being aware of that or not caring, hires a substitute teacher who then teaches the same students, using those same paintings, um, but without necessarily knowing exactly what went into it, but having enough knowledge to infer what went into it. Then did they steal those paintings
Um so
to teach
if
one substitute class?
so there's nothing being created yet, so there's no work. But if the students looked at those paintings and were just told copy this painting, they can't sell that in our current like in our current copyright and stuff like that. If they just look at someone else's painting that someone else owns and copy it as well as they can, and don't add
Hmm.
anything new to it, they wouldn't actually be able to sell that. You can't just same with photographs. You can't just like hyper realism copy someone else's photograph and then sell that. You have to
Right.
add something to it. But even then, I do think that they are adding more to it than the AI. Even if they were to just copy it exactly as well as they could, they're still adding their own flaws, their own experiences. They might focus more on certain things of the painting because of their experiences. Maybe they care more about certain colors and therefore they're going to focus more on those colors. So I would say they're still adding more than the AI, but they're not necessarily. You wouldn't be able to sell that. But
Hmm.
on the other hand, if they were then given those images and the teacher were to like just give them the images and then say, make something inspired by this, if they then
Hmm.
make something that's not a copy of that, the students are adding their own human experiences to make something new inspired on that data set. They're still adding the data set of their experience to the painting that already exists. They're still adding something new.
So what makes the data set of human experience more valid than the data set of um, you know information that you feed to an algorithm?
We're talking about stealing here.
Okay.
One they own, one they don't own. What's the difference between an apple I paid for and an apple I didn't pay for? Like that's it feels like that's what you're asking right now.
Okay. So I guess as I see it, like if I watch a movie on Netflix, I I'm renting access to it, but I don't own the rights to it. I may own the rights to the physical DVD or if I get it that way. But they don't own the rights to my memory of the experience of watching the movie.
Yeah, that's right.
And
They
so
they
I
they
see AI training data as a computer equivalent of the memory of the experience.
if you were to have a perfect memory, look at a movie, memorize it, and then recreate the movie exactly. If it's like an animated movie and you're like a amazing animator that can make a whole animated movie yourself, if you were to then
Mhm.
recreate it exactly, that would still be copyright infringement. But the thing is, if you then create something new based off of that memory, it's the same thing. You're adding your human experience and then being inspired by what you've seen. The AI again is it's only where if we're talking about the 10 oil paintings of flowers and vases, it's only the works that someone else owns.
Okay, so if someone were to like, let's say these 10 vases have like 10, each one has one type of flower, but there are 10 different types of flowers in total. Then if someone were to take these images of 10 vases, each with a bunch of flowers, and then instead make an image of one vase with one of each of the types of flowers, and with the
Sorry,
base
say that
shape
again.
being
Sorry,
influenced.
sorry. Say that again. I
So, so like let's say there's 10 vases. One of them has like purple flowers, another one has orange flowers, another one has white
mhm.
flowers, whatever. There's 10 different types of flowers, um, and so the training data of these vases has vases with only one color of flower. But if you were to make instead an image of a vase with one of each of these flowers, then that would be like a different permutation of the information that was available.
Where is the new thing being? Where is the transformative thing being added? Where is the new narrative? Where is the
If
new
some
thing that isn't owned by someone else?
if someone were to describe the result of the 10 paintings and then describe the result of this other one that has elements of the 10 paintings but isn't itself identical, then the description would be this is a square vase with orange flowers, this is a round vase with blue flowers, etc. And then if they were to look at the new one, they would say, well, this is a straight, this is a kind of a twisted or warped face
And you're
that,
saying an AI is
has.
making this. An AI is making this off of 10 different oil paintings from like the original analogy.
I mean, the AI or the student, I think it's the same in either case. I mean, all right, so like if a student was to make a collage and, like photocopy each of these 10 vases and then cut out the flowers from the 10 vases and then put them all into one vase that's like shaped, from one half of each one, like it might look
Just
kind of
cut them out.
ugly,
So
but
they're
like,
not even painting at this point. They're just cutting them out exactly.
yeah,
Like
then that would be a
collage.
collage, and the end result would be a collage that has elements of each of those, but is distinct because it combines them in a new way. And I think that like AI taking elements of each one and making it distinct by combining them in a new way seems analogous there. So like, it.
So that's the thing. The student has added very little. They can do
Mhm.
that as like an exercise. They can do that for themselves, but they wouldn't be able to then sell that.
Okay.
If they were to sell that, it would be copyright infringement.
I think that there's like a point to where something can be really derivative without quite crossing the line of being copyright infringement. And a lot of AI exists in that space, but I don't think all of it does by default.
You need to add something. You have to transform something. And if you were to that's the collage analogy.
Mhm.
If you take 10 images that another person made and owns and cut them out and make a new composition to tell a new story, that's fair use. You can do that. I support that. I think that's good that you can do that. I think that we should be able to use other people's works to create new work. But if I were to just take their images, not even cut them out, and just randomly put them on a page and then sell that, you didn't do anything. You didn't have deliberate. The part of it is deliberately, intentionally transforming something. But if I just put them on a page like right next to each other in a grid and sell that, that's not. Even though both of them are technically collages on the paper, one is transforming, one is just not adding anything new. That's why you can't just sell it. It would be stealing. And the
Is it
same thing with
possible to
AI, they
transform
aren't adding
something?
anything new.
Is it possible to transform something without adding anything new?
Yes, I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
I wrote an essay on this. It's published somewhere. I don't remember where. But there is a museum. I forgot where it was. I think it was Denmark. We're just gonna pretend it's Denmark.
Mhm.
They paid an artist to. They paid an artist to make art for them. Gave them like $20,000 for two paintings or two pieces of art. It wasn't paintings. They said two pieces of art. He said okay. Comes back like a week later. Gives them two blank canvases and the title of these two blank canvases is "Take the Money and Run."
Oh, I remember
And then
that.
takes
Yeah.
yes. So he gave them two blank canvases, and his he later wrote like a thing saying like I was doing it to talk about like the exploitation of artists or whatever. Not that I agree with his point necessarily, but he was doing it to say a message. He was
Mhm.
expressing something. The
Yeah.
museum owner agreed that what they received was art. And I agree with
Mhm.
that because he gave them two blank canvases to express something based on his
Well,
experiences and life and what he wanted to say. He gave them two blank canvases and titled it "Take the Money and Run." But if you
well,
were
and
to
I
take
think part
those
of the
two,
context there is that he had previously done artwork. I can't remember if it was for the same museum or a different museum, where he had instead, like arranged a bunch of these bills in a particular pattern on a canvas. And so like the second one was kind of a it existed in the context of that
exactly.
first
It
image.
exists
Yeah, yeah.
in he even though he doesn't actually physically add something, he adds context and his expression. If you were to take those exact same canvases
Mhm.
and put them in the store, like an art store selling those canvases, they're not art. He didn't
Mhm.
add his expression. But then through the context of him giving them to a museum for $20,000 and titling them "Take the Money and Run," it is now art. So yes, I
Yeah.
think that I think there would be some issues if he took someone else's art and then gave it to the museum. I would still say his decision would be, I would consider it art because he's expressing himself, but I think there would still be issues with that ethically, copyright
Hmm.
wise. But yes, you can, something not actually changing anything can still be changing something through the human expression, the thing that the AI still doesn't have.
Hmm. So it almost seems like, all right, so that's an example of someone adding something ephemeral or hard to define to a piece
Mm-hmm,
that transforms it from a blank canvas into art.
mm-hmm.
Whereas AI almost does the inverse of that by your definition or by your understanding, in that it changes the context of the image to something that is technically original, in that it doesn't exist specifically in any of the training data. Like the output doesn't exist in the training data, but it doesn't have the you know that aspect that makes it art or not art.
Well, not an argument of art, an argument of whether it makes it theft or not theft. But it
Okay,
doesn't
yeah, yeah.
have you're not adding anything. You're not adding any sort of human experience, emotion, or anything new to it. You're
Hmm.
just using the original paintings, even though it's technically new. The piece you made is new, never existed before, but it still doesn't have anything added to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me like you're kind of saying AI is analogous to tracing um, by default, in that
Not exactly analogous. I don't know.
it's like someone can trace art as a way of getting practice to, and then use those skills in a way that's not derivative. Um,
Yeah, but
but
they
just
can't use
tracing
the
something
traced art.
directly, huh?
They can't
I'm
use the
sorry.
traced art.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
couldn't sell the traced art.
Hmm. And I think that like a lot of the AI stuff that is kind of derivative or low effort, or doesn't make any um, I don't know, effort to stand out. Um, I don't necessarily feel like it should be used or shared, at least commercially. But I think that the reason that I think that is different from your reason, in that I think that like um, I see AI art as being more like more an issue of automation than an issue of ownership. Um, because like if someone is if someone is an artist, then and they do a job, and there's time they invested in that skill set. um but if there's an easier, more efficient way to get equivalent results faster, then that would be putting their livelihood at risk. um because a smaller number of artists can do more output in the same time using AI and Photoshop rather than only Photoshop. And the same thing was kind of true with digital art. And so like I guess it seems to me like that seems to be where the issue is for me, is that AI gives an unfair advantage to people using AI against people who aren't using AI. But the advantage is only really unfair because automation in a capitalist system tends to be unfair. It's not uniquely unfair. Like um, automatic taxis would be unfair, or
So
factories using assembly
that's a
lines would be
different
unfair.
argument from theft. That's an
Yeah,
argument
it
about
is.
the
It is.
whether AI is ethically good or not. And I have my qualms with my opinion that AI waters down the human experience by removing intentionality.
Mhm.
It removes how much people intentionally do stuff, but that would be more saved for the next debate I have. But what I
Mhm.
will answer is my issue with AI with AR art isn't that it makes stuff faster. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that digital art is valid. It's real art. I don't think it's stealing. But
Mhm.
I've painted. I'm an artist. I do graphic design. I do video production, but I also do fine art and all that stuff, and photography too. digital art is a lot faster than painting,
Mhm.
but I don't think that makes that's bad. I don't think it's bad. I think there's still value in painting, just because digital art's faster. It's maybe digital art's more used now for commercial purposes. My issue is rather that I'm trying to find a good way to explain this. Is like I said, my issue is that it makes you do less intention. You don't you For example, if you create um a piece of art in AI, even if you make prompts, why is that person's arm pointing in that direction? Why did you choose this color? Why did the light come in this way? You didn't make those choices. You didn't make those intention, and therefore I think it's lesser form of expression. But on digital art, which is faster than painting, I make all the choices. I don't have to mix the colors, but I still decide what the color is. I can maybe use an algorithm to make something repeat multiple times, but I still made the decision to have it repeat multiple times. So that's my main thing, that why I think that AI art diminishes it diminishes intention.
So I'll accept that. I actually agree with you on that. I think that AI art does usually have less intentionality to it, and it is a lesser art form as a result of that. And I think that's why a lot of AI art tends to be slop, is because it's an art form that's well suited to slop. But I don't think that's all that it can do. It's just what it's optimized for.
I agree.
Um,
I agree. That's not all. I think on this we actually agree. That I would say most forms of I would say like 99% of AI art is lesser than any form of other art, because I think almost all other forms of art have way more intention. But I think that you
mhm.
can use AI in a way that is very intentional and has
Yeah.
choices, but I think that's a rare outlier. I don't disagree with that. But if we're talking about the value AI art brings to society, if it's
Mhm.
99% just flooding everything with slop and 1% actually increasing intention, and it becomes so good that it's now indistinguishable from regular art, and you don't know which one was done with intention, which brings more value to it inherently, because you can analyze the motivations behind that art, compared to the same art being done by an AI. You can't analyze the motivations between individual aspects. If it's 99% of it is creating slop that competes with intentional art, then I would say that it's probably bad for society, even though you can technically create intentional art with it.
Okay, yeah, that's a valid criticism. I think that that is one of the dangers of AI art or generative art. Um, Something kind of similar to this that comes to mind is how when Steam started their Steam Greenlight program, and then again later when they ended it, a lot more indie games came onto the platform, but also a lot more like cheap and derivative slop games came onto the platform too. And so it's like
So when
now it's a lot harder.
Steam did what change specifically?
They had a program called Steam Greenlight where basically people
Mm.
could submit
Oh yeah.
games to Steam for evaluation, and the community would vote on them. And games that won the vote would be allowed to come onto the Steam platform, even without a publisher, or without a well-known publisher.
But the thing is,
Um,
even those bad games, they were
mhm.
still done with intention. Like there's still
Yeah.
deliberate, like intentional things. That's the thing. My issue isn't with whether the slop is bad. Like you can
Mhm.
make something like garbage art. If your art's garbage, I still think it has more value than most AI art, because you intentionally made that piece of trash art. But the
Yeah.
thing is, even those Steam games, they made a tool. If you make a tool that makes something easier, you're gonna get more of it. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
Same thing with digital art. I think the ease of access to digital art made there be way more art. And we can even go further back. The making getting paint was became easier and easier, and because of that, there were more art and more artists. And of course, that's gonna
Mhm.
make more bad art. But even the
Yeah.
bad art in those extents still has the intention. So it's not good art competing with bad art, with both of them being intentional. It's good art competing with something that looks like good art without the intention.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think that it's kind of hard to make art with AI that has no intention. Um,
I agree. Well, it
someone would
has
almost,
less.
yeah. So like if you're saying no intention, I would disagree there. But if you're saying less intention, then I'm on board with that. Because um, I mean, like I don't know. I see when I'm on the Midjourney server, like if I hop into some of the general channels where like people will just be generating images in the same room and you kind of riff off of each other's work. Some like I saw one the other day where it was like promotional image for Dubai or something like that. It was just it was like clearly some kind of like crypto adjacent kind of vibes to it, and someone was using it for commercial purposes, and I was like, it's a little off putting there. Um, and like they just kind of picked whichever one looked like most like generically pleasing rather than which one had like more it was more artistically
Yeah.
interesting, right? But the fact that they did make a choice of those four images of all right, of these four I'm going to upscale this one and I'm not going to upscale this one, like I could kind of tell that even though they were making really derivative art or illustration might be a more accurate term here. um I could still see that there was a selection process that they were using to kind of decide this one I'm going to take, this one's not good enough.
My camera just died, so we're gonna have to end the call sooner than later because I have two batteries. I need to save the other battery for the other debate. Um,
Okay.
but but no, that I was listening to most of what you said, but I got a little bit distracted about my camera just dying on me. But and
Are you still there?
I agree. I agree that there's more creative forms. And that's the thing too is you might have noticed that I actually share the server with you you can
I,
show
I did
share
notice that.
Discord
Yeah.
servers. Yeah, I was really funny because literally everyone on the Reddit thread was
Mhm.
accusing me of like you don't actually know what AI is. You don't know what AI art is. You've never even used these stuff. When that's like
Well,
the
and to play
opposite of the
defense for the AI Wars subreddit a little bit is like a lot of those people are kind of emotionally charged just because they've seen so many bad faith attempts that they're kind of cynical about it. And I don't know that's not really that doesn't entirely justify it, but it does kind of explain it a little bit. Um, so yeah, that
I
was kind
get
of
it, I
a
get it, but like it's like literally I was like, no man, I've used AI, I've done these things, I know how they function, to
Mhm.
then come to this opinion. But I guess because my camera's dead, and I do want to a little bit go back to the topic of um of stealing. Do you
Yeah, I
think?
kind of get the impression that we agree that we just don't agree on that, and I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we might have to just agree to disagree because
I think
I
so.
can't seem to bring up
I
the
think
way
we
that you
kind of
said.
started going in circles at the end a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that, by the way. But
No, no,
other
it's
than
fine. I
that,
was
I
part
think
of
I
it.
agree with
A
you on
circle has two ends.
for
That's
sure.
not actually true. It
Um,
has no ends, but
um, I agree with you on almost everything except for that one specific point, and I feel like I don't know if I were to reverse my opinion on that particular point, or if you were to reverse your opinion on that particular point, we'd probably have the same viewpoints other than that issue, or very similar viewpoints,
so
anyways.
my final question for you would be though,
Mhm.
if you agree that a lot of AI art as a whole, like
Right?
not everyone, but you kind of agree that maybe it has a more negative influence than positive influence. It's
Yeah, that's a
it,
strong possibility.
so you think there's more negative influence than positive influence.
Hmm.
The legal framework for whether it's theft or not, you can at least agree with me that it's debatable. That it's not like hardline set that this is 100% like not stealing at all.
It feels to me like it's 100%, not
Okay, fine,
stealing
fine.
at all.
Okay, but if
But
you
I understand that people see things differently, and maybe I don't know, maybe society will
okay,
reach a different consensus than the one I've arrived to.
yeah, so
So,
so at least do you agree that it causes more negatives than positives? Why are you then pro AI? Like in
um,
it being like continued and furthered and used.
hmm.
Yeah, that's my main question.
I would say that most of the negative externalities of AI have more to do with capitalism and like a hyper competitive, culture in America and in the world more broadly. Um, I mean, I don't know if we lived in like a socialist utopia where everyone had UBI and work was like an optional thing people could do for fulfillment, not for any like need, then I think that would eliminate most of the harm that's coming from AI. And I also think that AI makes it easier for harm. Like there's types of AI or there's types of harm that are made easier by AI as a tool, but they're not unique to AI. Like you could use like Fiverr to pay someone to make unflattering artwork of a politician in a way that's deceptive, and you could do the same thing with AI, but it would be 5 times cheaper to get the same result. So it's like, um, I don't think AI is necessarily like worse as a kind so much as it's worse as a scale of things that are already bad that can be done without it.
Okay. Then I guess my other question would be um two more questions actually. First is, do you
Sure.
think that it should be required to label if something's AI?
Oh yes, I think
So
there's
yeah.
several arguments in favor of that.
So I think, and then also to your point of like, if we lived in a where you didn't need to work without money, without all those stuff, that AI
Mhm.
would be less harmful. I think that's true to a lot of extent of like people just like pushing out crap to make money. Like people on YouTube making full AI channels that post like 5 times a day to like get
Mhm.
YouTube ad revenue. I agree that would reduce that. But I still think that there would still people for personal accolades lying about whether they use AI or not, and like it still there would still be the confusion between like what I would consider real art and AI art, and
Mhm.
and that intention. I think that it wouldn't get rid of all the problems, it would get rid of some of the problems.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Hmm.
so do you agree that whether there'd still be problems? There'd still be a decent amount of problems, even if it would get rid of like the, oh, I'm gonna make slop to get ad revenue or stuff like that.
I think it would kind of decrease the problems to the point where they'd be roughly in the same ballpark as the problems with any other art form. Because like there's people who like okay, like just one controversy that's come up is people making deep fake porn of people, where someone will have like a headshot of a person, and then they'll have like enough training data of them to get their body type, and then superimpose it on a nude body that looks similar to what they would look like naked, and like that's kind of skeevy and illegal in some places, as it should be, because
I
it's
I agree
unethical.
with that. I still think though
Um,
that it would reduce the intentionality, like
yeah,
intentionality. Like it would still it would like
so
if you look at art, you can't analyze AI art in the same way that you can analyze other forms of art, and I still
well,
think it would remove that.
to finish the point that I was making, so like
Oh, sorry,
deepfake
sorry, sorry.
nudes are wrong ethically, and they're becoming illegal, as they
Yeah.
should. Um, but using Photoshop to accomplish a similar effect is just as wrong for all the same reasons. It's just it's harder to do and takes longer to do, and for worse quality than doing the same thing with AI. But like that's kind of what I mean when I say that you know you can still get the same kinds of evil with AI as you can with any other art form. The only difference is that AI is easier, and has a gentler learning curve than some of these other forms.
I agree on most things on that. Like I agree on stuff like that. It just making something easier will make evil uses of that also easier, and I don't think that makes
Mhm.
it wrong. I agree with that. But then again, I think that the one thing that even without the existence of monetary incentive is that it would people would be less, because you can just make something with AI that's like high quality, they would be
Mhm.
less incentivized to try and make something themselves that might end up being lower quality or even bad quality, but they still have
Mhm.
the value of the expression of their creativity and intentional decision making. Like if you have
Yeah.
someone that's like not good at art yet, I think anyone can become good at. A lot of the AI War subreddit will disagree with me on this. Um, you have some people that like are not good at art yet. I think anyone can become good at art, or mostly anyone can become good at art. If they're
Hmm.
not good at art and they want to make something, they can now instead go to AI and just type in what they want, and it'll create something for them. Or before AI, if they wanted something, they could either go to another artist and then that other artist would add to the world by adding their own creativity, or they would try to make it themselves and then they would
Yeah.
express themselves with intentional decisions. I think that even without the monetary incentive, it still would reduce the amount of creative expression in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that as a possibility, but let me offer like a counterexample though. Um, I think that like in some ways you might be able to get a purer form of expression, which can be good or bad. But like if someone is like a talented writer, world builder, and that's like the area where they're really good at creatively, but they haven't put the practice in to become good at art, then they could write a story, and make it, and kind of make use of the areas where they're already good, and then use AI to skip past the process of learning to be good at art. So they'd be able to kind of make it so that the story would be the front and center part, with the art just
But
filling in the blanks.
then what they've made, you can't look at what they made has less intention in it.
It
It has the
would.
less deliberate intention, and you can't look at that form of art. Like you can't look at that. It would then be not competing monetarily, but competing attention wise to stories that were made fully by humans, where every word and sentence has intention. So
Mhm.
it then will now compete with those, and
Well,
both of them
I
will
guess.
be next to each other. One of them you can analyze why someone did each thing within it, and the other one you can only analyze the story as a whole, and therefore you now have, I would say, a lesser form and a greater form of art competing for that attention.
I agree. And I think that on the for each individual artist, it would kind of come down to a choice of, do they want quantity or quality, or do they want to focus on like doing the writing by hand and doing the art using AI, or do they want to do the writing by hand and have a friend of theirs do the art themselves? And I think that I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer there. It kind of depends on the priorities of the individual. Because like, there's a number of series that I like that are like really long. Like the Wheel of Time comes to mind as like a book series that I like, but it's pretty long. But I feel like
The thing
I
is,
don't
we
know.
already have enough content. There
Yeah.
exists enough content, good content, for us to enjoy, that is fully made by humans, that has everything intentional, that has a greater level of depth and analysis. We
Mhm.
have enough of that already for everyone to find what they want forever. And we are going to continue creating that, influenced by our current culture and standards and experiences. Why then fill that even more with something less? That's the thing. I would rather have a person that writes a story that doesn't I think writing is art, but someone I would
Mhm.
rather have someone write a story that isn't good at drawing, find a friend to draw for them, and now you have two experiences and creative expressions, rather than have that one person write the story and just AI generates it, because there's more
Yeah.
content, there's more quantity, but the quality is diminished when we already have enough quantity.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
But anyways,
I'm trying to think of part of why I think that it in some cases, like I think generally I would agree with you that using AI as like a crutch to avoid having to work with other people, I think that could have a negative effect on the quality. But I don't think that would always be the case, because like there's a number of times where like I've seen video games that are made by one person, and sometimes they're just worse, but sometimes they're just weird in a way that's not necessarily bad, but it's more like someone was able to really narrowly focus on their creative vision, and execute it. Um, and because they didn't have interference from team members, or someone to kind of, or like an editor or something, you almost get like a purer form of expression from them than if they had to collaborate with other people, and that can be good or bad. It feels like it's like an amplifier for their vision, And if someone has
That's
a
fair.
mediocre vision, that can be a bad thing. But if someone has a really interesting vision, then kind of dulling it by having someone say, "Yeah, let's make this a little bit more friendly for casual viewers." It's like having that voice might make it more commercially successful, but it also might make it less creative, or and I think that when it's video games in particular, there's like a lot of different things that go into it. There's sound, there's music, there's art, there's programming, there's game design. And so like all of those different elements means that someone has to be kind of a generalist in a bunch of fields in order to make a fully functional video game with someone else. And people do it, but it's a harder way to make video games in a lot of ways. But it's the results tend to be, more I don't know, I guess I want to say more genuine is what I want to
Yeah,
say.
that
And so
that's fair.
like
I I
if
do
someone
I
has
do I do have to cut you off because I do have to. The next debate does start soon, and I want to take a small break where I fix the camera um and take a small break because I have a little bit of a sore throat. I need to get something for that. So
Yeah, well, hey, I've appreciated this conversation, and thanks for
me too.
chatting with me. I don't know, I'm really interested in AI. It's kind of a special interest of mine of sorts.
Yeah.
So getting to talk about it was a lot of fun.
No, I really appreciate it, and honestly, no, you all came across messaging me and in this conversation. I feel like more good faith than a lot of the other people did.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate that too. And I think we had a good discussion, even though we still disagree on some things. We agree on others, and I really appreciated talking to you.
Well, and as far as the disagreement on whether AI is theft or not, I think that if any suggestions on like regulations or changes to improve the situation, any suggestions you come up with that don't engage with that one way or the other might be like an area where there can be compromise. Because I think that's one of
Yeah,
the areas where people disagree. But if there's solutions that don't touch on that, that might be a possible place to have common ground with people with similar views to mine. So I don't know.
awesome. Well, thank you
All
again,
right.
and it was nice talking to you. See ya.
Likewise. All right. Bye.
Bye. I appreciated that discussion. Let me fix all this stuff. So yeah, that guy was very nice. I very much appreciated talking to him.